Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Steve Weber, and he is author of the book, The Place Between Here and There. Now I have to ask, do you mean purgatory?
Well, Peggy, it's so good to see you, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to connecting with you and your beautiful community here. So I'm really excited. So all set to go.
Okay. So I'm serious though. Is this like do you think the word purgatory? I mean, that means a lot of things, but that's not what you mean, right?
No,
Or
no, it's not what I mean at all. And it's but purgatory is a really good analogy. It is because I grew up. I'm a Catholic. I'm still a Catholic, more of a Christmas and Easter Catholic, but I identify with that very much. I was confirmed. My children were confirmed, and
okay.
married in Catholic Church. That's the type of thing. And but it is important to us. But in the Catholic religion, you get taught, at least at that time when I was a young child, you got taught about purgatory. And purgatory was a place, you know, maybe you weren't bad enough to go to down there, but you weren't exactly good enough to go up in the clouds. So you had to come here and do your penance. And that's the way I learned purgatory to be. But in the place between here and there, the place between here and there in my own mind and my own experience, that was purgatory. But it wasn't in place of punishment. It was in place of enlightenment, where I believe, at least from my experience, is that you begin the transition process from coming from physical existence to transition into spirit. Just as you transition from spirit into physical existence, it's a process. I don't believe it's just boom, you're in one place, all of a sudden you're alive and walking around. No, it's a process. And that's what that place between here and there was to me. Is at first I didn't know I was any place else. And I was slowly coming to terms with my life and everything that's happened in my life and all the things which I've learned from my life and all the things I have yet to learn from my life. Not only what I have yet to experience, because obviously I'm alive now, but also to re-examine everything that's happened to me in my past. And that's a most critical part of that experience is the life review.
Yeah.
So that purgatory that experienced is 100% in line with my Catholic faith, at least the way I see it. And it really is, because it really is. It's a beautiful place of love and light and encouragement and coming to terms with everything that's happened in your life. And for me, it really brought so many things home for me, because prior to that, I was a zero on the spirituality scale. A pleasure
Okay.
maximizing unit, as I like to call it.
Okay. Okay. Well, got that out of the way. I probably should have asked that at the end, but I couldn't help myself. So feel free to start where you like and take as long as you like. Okay.
Well, I just so where do I start? I mean, so many things have happened. And what I mean by that is that what I thought the experience was at first turned out to be so much more. In fact, let me start at the beginning, where I first encountered this this craziness. Um, Myself, I was a computer computer guy, technology, but I was also an outlaw biker. I really was. I love riding my Harley Davidsons, and I rode them all over the country. And one afternoon while I was out riding, I was coming up to an intersection, good old fashioned left hand turn, when boom, motorcycle, car. Actually, it was a truck. It broadsided me on my left hand side, took me out. I didn't know what happened at all. Next thing as I knew, I was flying through the clouds, going up to the great beyond. But I didn't go there. I was actually in a helicopter. I was being airlifted to this hospital, this premier trauma center, that if I was anywhere else, I would have died. I mean, absolutely. And at the time, I would have been very upset by that. But I've come to learn other things since then. But but I had a broken spine, compound fractures, and just my traumatic brain injury. All these traumatic injuries. Anywhere else, I would have died. But it just so happens I landed at Stony Brook Hospital. That was one of the greatest trauma centers in the world. It's a teaching hospital, and they've done so many things over the years about sonograms and such innovative therapies, especially in the area of trauma surgery. They put me back together. And but for the next month to the world, I was in my hospital bed, but in myself, in my spirit, I was someplace else. And that's what we first talked about, the place between here and there. It's kind of like, at least what I saw it as, like a purgatory, but not a place of punishment, a place of learning where you grow and make sense of your life and everything that's happened. Um, at first, I didn't know I was anywhere else. I didn't know I was anywhere else. I just thought I was in a regular work situation. But but things started to seem different after a little while. And what I mean is that this is where I learned, at least what I used to call the 101 of the universe, introduction to spirituality 101. And it wasn't like I was sat down at a table by anybody or anything and said, okay, Steve, open the book. This is chapter 1. Start right here. No, the way I was taught was I was shown things, excuse me, I was shown things, and then I had to make sense of them for myself. And then I had all these experiences and things to reflect upon, and then I would just grow from those experiences. And I'll give you an example. That sounds like a crazy word salad, and I don't mean to do that, but if I was just to elaborate on it a little bit, one of the first lessons I learned was how to sense spirit, your spirit inside everybody and everything. That was one of the first lessons that I had to learn before learning any other lesson. And the way it was shown to me is that I was in a work-like setting. Like I said, I was a computer guy, and I was interacting with a customer of mine that I knew in real life. I hadn't seen this person in 20 years. And
So like this scenario played out of you doing this, like this memory, or did it ever really happen?
this never happened.
Okay, but you're watching this like scenario as if it did?
No, I should have made that clear. And thank you, Peggy, for pointing that out to me. No, when I review something, that is part of my life review. And that's not what I'm talking about now. I'm
Okay.
experiencing it now. I'm not reviewing anything. It's based upon things that have happened in my life, but now I'm in this new situation and I'm experiencing these situations, and it's from these experiences I'm learning. And this first experience, I use the term they
Okay.
very loosely. I'm learning how to sense spirit in everybody and everything. This is the
Oh,
really, and so the way, and so I'm explaining how they're teaching me. I'm going to get to that life review because that's really important. But right now, spiritually, I'm not even to that point where I could get anything out of it. That's what I mean. It's a process by which you learn and begin to reconnect with spirit. If I would have done my life review at the beginning of this, I wouldn't have made any sense of it. I had to learn about spirit and other things before I can get to that part. And
so
so,
was it like you had no memory of your life, but you're like in this classroom and you're learning? I mean, I'm
no,
trying to picture it. I'm
no,
sorry.
these are great questions. Let me help you picture it. It's nothing like that.
Okay.
It's nothing like that. It's just like I'm living my life. I think I'm in regular my life. All of a
Okay.
sudden, I'm in work and I'm sitting there working with one of my customers I haven't seen in 20 years. And they look just like I remember them 20 years ago. They haven't aged a bit. And right now, I'm not sensing anything that's going on. I don't remember the motorcycle accident at all. I don't remember the car making a left-hand turn and the truck and hitting me. I just found myself in a work-like situation. I don't know why it didn't occur to me like anything else had happened. It's not like I didn't have any memory of who I was, but I wasn't focusing on that. It's like you at this moment, you may not be focusing on when you graduated from high school. It's I don't know how to explain it, but it just wasn't what I was focused on at the time. It was just I was dealing with the situation. And this situation is I was presented with this fella who I knew in real life, haven't seen in 20 years, and now I'm interacting them. He had a problem with his computer that I had to solve. one thing I began to learn here is that there's a physical reason for why you do things, and there's a spiritual reason. And so anytime I was fixing someone's computer in that other place, the place between here and there, had nothing to do about computers. It had to do about this spiritual reason, which I'll get into a little bit later. But speaking to this fella, is I thought it was odd that he hadn't aged at all in 20 years. Not one bit, didn't age. And so that was it. And I helped him. And then the next day, I use the term day very loosely. I saw him again, but he had aged like 50 years. He was like an old man. And then I looked at him. I thought I thought it must be his father or something. And then some things happened. And all of a sudden I realized like he would do a mannerism or he would say something. And I'll say, "You're so and so." And he would smile and say, "You're right. You got me this time." And that's the way it went on. This fellow would appear to me time and time again. Sometimes he would appear to me as a child. Sometimes he would appear to me as different races or different genders. And I'd have to guess who he was, that was him. It was kind of like this game. And at first, I didn't understand what was going on. I was just going with it. And so as I was interacting with this fellow, is that I kept on guessing who he was. But after a while, I was getting it right away. Like I didn't have to see a gesture. It was like, it was like 90% a gesture and 10% something else. Then as time went on, it began to change. Is that more and more I was relying on this intuition that I was being able to develop about sensing what makes up this fellow. What is his inner spirit? What is that part of him that never changes, no matter who he is, where he is, what incarnation, anything about this fellow, until I began to sense that. And then after a while, I didn't even need to see him. It's I could just sense him in the room. And that was when everything changed. Because once I was taught how to sense spirit and feel spirit, then all of a sudden it's like a language was opened up to me. All of a sudden, this world that I never knew existed, all of a sudden, all these things started opening up to me. I started to see and understand things in a new light. Once I could see and sense spirit in everybody and everything, I began to understand certain things. I began to sense spirit in every living creature, everything. All the planets, all the universes. I mean, I've heard this before, but it's true that I began to understand. I began to see the commonness of that spirit in everybody and everything. It was different, a little different from everybody. Everyone's was a little different, but the core of the spirit was the same. We are all from the same, and what I believe, the same creation. Whether you believe in the Big Bang or let there be light, it explains the same thing. We are all linked together, just like everything you see is the creator and the creation are one. And that's when I began to understand, is that we are the creator, we are the creation. And that was a very important step to understand, because once I began to understand that, then things started to come into line even more. Is that just as we have cells in our body, and each cell has its own life. It lives, it dies, it reproduces, it avoids pain and such. And all the cells have no idea who we are. They don't even know we exist. But all those cells make up us and our consciousness. And that's what I learned in this place, is that I learned all of us together are like cells in a body, and we all make up a consciousness, the consciousness of the universe, and what I believe, according to my experience, the consciousness of the creation. And so, so that was my first experience there, and that was what I had to go through in order to now have my eyes opened up to the ways of what I was yet to learn. And so what I later learned about this place is that my first step here was to learn what I call the language of the universe. But what I later learned was many other philosophies and religions call it syncing with the Akashic record, where I share my experiences with all that there is, and I receive that wisdom from my experiences based upon my new understanding. And it was through the life review that I was able to really truly understand things. Let me elaborate just a little bit more. Is that what I was able to do is now I could see spirit in everybody and everything. And so now I was able to review my life over and over again, everything that happened in my life. I was able to review it, but with a new sense of eyes, a new sense of awareness, because now my awareness has changed and every experience in my life is now different because I could see and sense everybody's spirit. This is why I had to learn to sense people's spirit. Now, every situation that I experienced in life, now I could see. And when I say see, I don't mean see. I mean sense everyone's spirit, and everyone's situation on why they're in every situation is different. And it all makes sense to them according to the path that they're on. So if I mentally go back to, and I'm I'm going through my life review, and there's a fight on the schoolyard or something, and I'm reviewing that. At one time, when I was a kid, I thought this was a terrible thing, but now I see my role in it. I see everyone else's role. I see their perceptions. Everyone was there to get a different experience to draw upon to learn lessons. And so this is what happened is I went through my life over and over again. And each time I went through my life and I was reviewed it entirely up until that point, I learned so many things about my life. And so based upon that, I would do a life review again because now my awareness was raised, and now I'd go through my life review again. And I did that over and over and over again. And each time I did that is that I felt like a weight was lifted from my spirit. I mean, really, because that as I started to go through all my experiences in life, I started to realize that the worst, I mean the worst, most painful experiences in my life, the things that I did such wrongs to other people, or things that other people did such grievous betrayals and wrongs to me, all of a sudden they began to make sense to me now. They really did. They began to make sense in a way that I was learning from them. And as I learned, like all that hatred or animosity or guilt or shame started to leave me as I started to understand all the things that had happened to me. All of a sudden, the worst things that happened to me were the things that brought me the most bliss in the place between here and there where I was learning. I knew every time I started my life review, I knew it was going to be a really bad day. But by the end of it, I would feel so blissful. It was addicting. And that drove a sense of urgency for me to experience this life review over and over and over again, and to learn from all those experiences. You know, one of my favorite mantras, a prayer that I like to do, it's Om Namo Gurudev. No, excuse me. Let's try again. Ekankar Satanam Karata Purik Nirvo Nirver Kal Murit Ajuni Sapong Guru Prasad Jap Ad such to God such have such Nanaka be such. And a really important part of that prayer is that it says, I will have no hate or animosity towards anyone who does harm to me ever. I'll never let anybody do harm to me. No. But once I've experienced this hate and animosity causes blocks in your ability to understand what's happened to you, and your ability to let that go not only enables you to understand things, but enables you to really receive the bliss of the experience, the learning of the experience. And that was one of the most important things I learned there about forgiveness, forgiving yourself and forgiving others. And even in my life now, if I can't look back 6 months ago and think what a jerk I was, it means I'm not learning. I'm not learning at all from my experience. It really is. If I could say, "Oh, Steve, I can't believe you said that way back when," I'm doing good. That's doing good in Steve's book, because it is about learning. And if there's one thing that I could share, and I have a lot of one things I could share, but the one thing I could share from my experience truly is that life review is so valuable, because it really is. There's such a reluctance for you to do it, because you have to face very difficult things. That it's difficult. You don't realize it. At least I didn't realize it. But once your skin starts getting a little tough, at first you may not be able to do it. You get to a dark space. You got to put it aside for now. I call it taking little bites. You put it a little aside for now. You keep on visiting back until you begin to address it. And so, and once you begin to feel comfortable with facing your own challenges and beautiful experiences, once you start to be able to do that, a lot of things, at least for me, fell into place.
I'm absorbing.
Yeah, I don't know, I could, it's before I had this experience, I was always a pretty intense guy, no doubt. But this whole thing, when I share this experience, this is according to Steve, and everything that I experienced was what I needed to experience according to my path. Somebody else may have a different experience. No,
Isn't that weird?
undoubtedly. No, yes,
I
it
mean,
is.
it's fascinating.
It is fascinating, is the word. Right, right.
Yeah.
And it is, because it just seems like my whole time there, I didn't feel like there was a master power interceding. It felt like everything just worked. It felt like it wasn't like I made a deal with anybody. We had this discussion. It was just like it was just laid out. There wasn't like a master voice saying, "Stephen, you have to learn this now." It was just apparent by the way things changed and the way things worked. Excuse me. But really, just to just put a pin in this part, is that really just the life review is so important. If you could work through that and deal with the ego.
That's what I was going to say. Is it about
Yeah.
getting rid of the ego?
Yeah. Yeah. Now the ego means different things to different people, as you know, Peggy. But to me, and what my experience of what the ego was, in my experience, this is just the universe according to Steve, is that the ego is a person that's kind of like invented inside of you through your negative experiences. And so for instance, when you're a kid, you get bit by a dog, now you're afraid of dogs. And so that's it. For the rest of your life, you're afraid of dogs. But if you don't review that as you get older in life, and you can't make sense of the things like, well, I'm older now. There are good dogs and they're not so good dogs. There are angry dogs. There are happy dogs. I could tell the difference now. And that's what somebody goes through when they go through life. But what happens sometimes is those little incidences, they build up and people never go back and revisit them. And so a lot of things that they do is very reactionary, that they don't think it through. It's just like, okay, dog bit me, afraid of dogs. I got stung by a bee. Yeah, bees. It's like a reaction, like it's that life review that's that safety thing that causes you to reevaluate it. But if you don't reevaluate that, all these behaviors add up into yourself, into your psyche, and you do a lot of things that you really don't know why, but that's just the way I am. Just the way I am. And then what happens when you do this, you almost build up a big person inside of you, another person inside of you that is battling with the you that you are. And so what happens is that the you inside of you sees a dog and starts getting frightened, but the older you wants to examine it, but then that ego you says no, no, no. It's kind of like that constant battle between your interactions, those learned behaviors you're not aware of, and your awareness as you grow. Ego is your learned behaviors. Your awareness is what battles that. And what this life review enables you to do, it enables you to take care of that ego and address all those behaviors, because now you get better at not feeling so afraid, that oh, I'm gonna have to face this terrible thing, because the payoff is going to be that great. It really is. And that's I mean, really, that's one of the most valuable lessons I learned. Although I'll say every lesson was the most valuable.
It makes me think of couples fighting, and you can't kiss and make up unless get past the fight.
So
There's a
true.
reward.
No, 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 it really is, because it was almost like I don't know, it's just like, it was so driving to feel that bliss. That's why my life review went over and over again, over and over, until I stopped learning. Then when I stopped learning, and life review tend to slow down. The more I learned, the more faster it went. But the less I learned, the more it slowed down. It's kind of like the opposite of what you would think. And then when I didn't learn anything more, then I found myself in the next situation. Because the first situation was when I learned the language of the universe according to Steve. But really syncing with the Akashic record. And then the next part was receiving going through my life review. So now I had the methodology by which to review my life by seeing spirit, and now I could go to this next step where I reviewed my life and had all my awareness. And then this next step was where I didn't know this at the time, but I was being tested on my knowledge. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. But one thing about this place, I mentioned how during the life review, how things would go. When I was learning a lot, they'd go very fast. But when I wasn't learning a lot, they would go very slow. And that's the way time is measured there. There isn't like the sun rising and falling, like days beginning and end. Although your experience may involve a sunrise or a sunset, but that's not the way it keeps time. That would just be that one experience. Is that, like, if you think about time, you have appointments in the future, grass grows, water boils, there is passage of time. The only thing that passes time in that place is your spiritual growth as you learn. It's not like someone's rewarding you saying, oh, well, but you did good. You have, no, it's not like that. It's that the way time moves is that you understand the process by which you're learning and growing your understanding. So as your understanding grows, you remember how you got that understanding, and that path that you walk to get that understanding, that gives you a sense of time moving. And that's really, so if you're not learning, you're not doing anything, time is bitterly slow. Nothing happens. Zero. It is like a empty bowl you're sitting in. You're sitting naked in an empty bowl. That's the way it's like if you're not spiritually growing. And that's like any punishment, And often I think about my Catholicism, and I often think about the two things at first I thought was directly in contrast to my new understanding. Like I thought it was against my church, but really in my own way, it's a further clarification of these two important things. We already touched on one, which was purgatory. What is purgatory? Well, yeah, it really is this place, but not exactly the way it was explained to me. It's a place of love and light and learning and understanding. But hell, what is hell? Hell isn't like some guy with a pitchfork and a pointy tail doing it. No, and what I think that life review was kind of like a hell. It really was, because you had to face all these things. And the more things you had to face, the more difficult it would be. If you really were a cruddy person, or you really had some terrible things, you'd have to spend a lot more time in that awful life review. But at the end of it, you're liberated, and that's the same way. And so I could see those two things fit in very, very well with at least the way that I see it now. But that could just be the way I was meant to understand it. So then finally, the last, not the last place, but finally, when I was tested, I didn't know I was being tested on anything. And what I later believed it was okay. um, I I was I was in a restaurant. I had a job. I was working in a restaurant, and I was in charge of all of these kids, young adults who were like barmaids and bar backs, working through college. And I was in charge of these kids. and I had to teach them these tasks. The kids wouldn't listen to me. No matter what I did, they wouldn't listen to me. And I would see them and we would be like connecting. I could see you, you could see me. Okay, let's do this. And they would all agree. Then they would scatter like little chipmunks, and I'd see them later. They'd be so sorry. And they, oh, we forgot. And no matter what I did, is I couldn't get these kids to understand their task. And I would stand before the my boss, and it was very odd because I sensed an aura, like an energy, like around my boss, like it was like this. I say it's an aura, but here we talk about auras like lights or like colors. Oh, you have a blue aura. It wasn't like that. It was like an energy that surrounded him, and I could say it was a color, but like white or something, but it was no color. It was like every color. I don't know how to explain it, but it was an energy. And that energy was proportionate, at least I felt, with their awareness. And then I noticed the kids had no aura like that at all. And then one time when I was at my wit's end and I was standing in front of this boss, I realized that I was standing before myself. I was standing before my higher self, that part of me and you, which is always in spirit. And that from what I understood is that we always, perhaps our lives aren't a series of births and deaths. It's a continuation of consciousness always, with new experiences added to that consciousness, and that our spirits, and I use come down to earth. I use come down as very, yeah, I think you get what I mean. But we have an earthly incarnation to experience life and to learn things and to grow, so our spirit awareness, our higher self, can grow and evolve with time and become a more aware spirit. And and so and so as we learn and grow, and I began to see my, excuse me, I lost my train of thought, but now I remember, is that we come down to earth to have experiences, because when you're in that higher state of consciousness, you can't make the mistakes that you can make without that awareness. So that's why I believe that we have this experience here on earth with our lack of awareness, so we can make mistakes, that we could have experiences we wouldn't be able to have with our awareness. And then once we have our opportunity to reflect upon them again, that's how we learn and grow over periods of time. And that's what I began to understand by standing before my higher self, is that all of a sudden my awareness changed. And now it's not like my higher self told me anything, but just as I could stand in the grace, is that I couldn't see anything that had happened in my higher self's life, but I could see the lessons that were learned, and that the wisdom that it gave, and that by standing in that energy, like it made it easier for me to figure things out. Like there was a certain grace or a certain wisdom that I was learning. I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't that I was being taught anything, but I was being helped to figure it out on my own, if anything else, by using the energy. I'm babbling now, but that's the general gist I got out of it. And then when my higher self touched me on my shoulder, then all of a sudden everything changed, and then I understood things in a whole different light. Is that I've been being trained to see spirit, and my awareness has been raised through all of these experiences. And so now when I'm being tested on these kids, the only thing is I see is a bunch of dopey kids who won't listen to me. I didn't see the real reason why I was there. I was there to shepherd these kids. I was there to shepherd these kids into their first human incarnation. And it was something I was failing at, because I was taught to see spirit and sense spirit in everybody and everything. And the first chance I get, I don't do that. As all I do is I look at them as dopey kids. And that was an awful mistake that I made. And but but I think if if I didn't make that mistake, I wouldn't be here now, because I think then I would be ready to perhaps, go to the next spiritual step, maybe a spirit guide or something else. But but and that also taught me about our spirits, is that our spirits have been forever. I believe, and everything's is I believe. I believe. I'm not saying this is right for everything. I believe, according to Steve, but I believe that our spirits were born with the universe. Remember Big Bang or Let There Be Life? We're born with the universe, but not in its current state. It's, I believe, our spirits learn and grow through many different incarnations that we have. And as we learn and grow as individuals, the whole consciousness of everybody comes together and learns and grows even more, which is the reason for this incarnation, according to the world, according to Steve. But but now when I see those kids, is that they were going through all of their own incarnations prior to this point, different animals, different plants, different everything, their spirits, as they're learning and growing through different lives and experiences. And now it's their chance to become human. And so this is what I needed to do for the children there. And so as once I had this understanding, everything worked out, pretty okay. But
So were
I'm
you
being
supposed to find the good in them?
no, is that I couldn't. This is what I was doing wrong. It's I couldn't tell them what to do. It wouldn't work. That's what I was doing, is I was telling them what to do. I wasn't a I wasn't appealing to their own Namo Guru Dev Namo. That's their inner wisdom inside of them. Is that just as I was learning, nobody taught me, nobody told me anything. They gave me all of these experiences for me to learn from. And based upon those experiences I had, I learned from them and I was able to take these next steps. And when I was teaching the kids, is I was just barking at them, telling them what to do, is I was already shown how to teach by bringing them experiences. And that's the way I changed, as I began to show them things in a different way by giving them experiences to give them those wisdoms to get to the next step themselves. And just as I stood before my higher self and I gained like a wisdom through the energy that I received from just being there, I was giving that to the kids. And as I began to work with them, I began to see the energy within them growing, just as my energy began to grow as I began to teach them and mentor them in this situation. And it was all a test, and I failed it, but I learned from it. And that's another lesson that I learned there, is the same lessons can be learned from failure as they can from success. And sometimes with success, sometimes you're just lucky you didn't learn anything. And so it's something good to keep in mind. And so after I was done with that experience, that was a long time too. I mean, like I mentioned, is like how long I was in the coma for a month, but really, like, I had so many experiences in that place. It was like a hundred lifetimes, like 1,000 lifetimes. Although you don't measure it in time, you measure it in growth. But my experiences there was so much greater than my experiences here, at least up until that time. And then the very last places I was, is that I've come from a small town in New York, and called Kings Park. I grew up there. I lived my whole life there, except for now. Now I'm in sunny Florida, which I love. And so up in New York, there was this big bluff that overhang the Long Island Sound at the end of every day. The whole town goes down there, and people drink coffee, and some people drink out of red Solo cups that aren't coffee, and we all watch the sunset. We catch up on the gossip, like who's doing who and those kind of things. And so I found myself at the end of every day, very day, air quotes, sitting there with my two friends, Joey and Johnny from Kings Park. John, great guy. he was like a motivational speaker. So when he did the readings in church, he would like sound like the voice of God. He would say, "And Jesus said," and the place would shake as he talked. You know, he's real right at central casting. I really like Johnny a
I
lot.
envy those people who have the voice.
I know. It's like he should, you know, he had the right career. He was a motivational speaker. It showed, but I loved I mean, if he did your eulogy, you're in good, man. And then Joey was an Irish guy. He always had a good tale to tell, and he was a character, a really good guy. And and John, he had terrible diabetes. He really did, and he really struggled with it. He got a lot of infections in his legs and stuff. And Joey, when he was a kid, he broke his back diving in the water in the bluff there, and he had to have surgery like in the 60s to like have his back all straightened down. He walked around kind of like you know, kind of like a movie character because he couldn't move his back and he had to like walk like this. But he had that Irish wit about him, and he could tell a tall tale. And so I don't think it, and everyone loved him. I don't think it slowed him down too much. But I would be sitting at the sunset with them every day, and I'd watch the sun go down. This would go over and over and over again, and I watched the sun go down, and one day, just day, one day, I realized that both Johnny and Joey were dead, and this couldn't be happening. And although a lot of really strange things had happened to me up until that point, it was almost like that was there, and it was almost like okay, like I really didn't even think about my real life in a long time. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, Joey and Johnny are dead. Johnny, he had diabetes, and he had an infection in his leg, and he went septic, and it killed him. And then Joey, he got hit by a car, and he probably got hit by a car because he couldn't turn his head, but they had just died in the last year. And I knew this, that was just like boom, right in my face. I didn't know how to deal with this now. And so we went through many more sunsets after that. And each time I was asking myself, I have to ask them what they're doing here. Because up until this point, we wouldn't say anything. We'd just watch the sunset. And I would just have to ask them, what are they doing here? But for some reason, I felt like I didn't want to know the answer. Like I was frightened, you know, I didn't want to know. Or maybe I didn't want, up until that point, I was having a very blissful existence. But over time, as time went on, as I felt a sense of urgency that was building. It was just building and building and building and building. And I felt like eventually that if I didn't ask them this time why they are here, I'll never get the chance again. So finally I asked them why they were here, not in words. I just kind of like thought it, I don't know how to explain it, but, and they said to me, they're here to make sure that I'm all right. I really didn't understand that because I was fine. It's like I didn't remember the motorcycle accident at all. I mean, I didn't remember anything. I was like, to make sure I'm all right. I mean, they're dead. And then I would just watch the sunset again. And then as the sun set, instead of getting dimmer, it just got brighter and brighter and brighter. And then the next things I know, I was opening up my eyes. And I was in the hospital room, and my mom was holding my hand. And she was telling me I'd been in a terrible accident, and everything was going to be all right. And so, and that's about a quarter of the story.
Is it possible that when you were in a coma that you could have been tapping into other people's lives and back and forth in time in their lives, that this was actually going on, but yet you were there though, and you wouldn't have been there in their lives. You were and have been in a coma. So what do you make of it? Do you think like we're shown these
Yeah.
scenarios to just teach us?
is it live or is it Memorex? I keep on asking myself that question. Is that, are those experiences that I had, if I understand your question correctly, are they real experiences that I'm having, or is it something that is like a show for Stevie? Are these real experiences? Like, for instance, that person that I was interacting with from my old work, from my working days, is that was he having that experience too? Or was this just a show for me and it had nothing to do with him? I think he was part of that experience too, according to their own perception. Why him? I don't know. Because my whole time there is I only came across four people, not including myself, four people who were either I knew in life who were, and two of them were still alive and two of them weren't. And so I often think, like, are they there just for the show? But there's a reason why I don't think that it's there for the show. I think it's real experiences. I do, because that one person was the fellow who kept on the shapeshifter, who kept on appearing to me in different shapes and different ways to try to teach me how to see spirit. He was a guy I just knew him for a short year or two. He's a great guy. He's from Haiti. He had such a personality. And I think that's why he was there, because that he spoke like a Creole, like a French Creole language. And he was very expressive because he had to be very expressive with his face, because he would forget words. So he'd kind of like give exaggerated gestures to kind of like communicate, kind of like what I'm doing now. And he would be very interactive, like that. And that's kind of like why I think he was there, because I got that from him in real life. And then Joey and Johnny, who we talked about, but there was also another person there, and this was a dear friend of mine who was like a dog walking buddy, and we had a group of friends that we all walked dogs together, and we were all like in the PTA. I was on the school board. She was one of the house parents, and we like ran civic groups together, and a good friend. And there was a lady in that place when I was with the children that all she did was pray. And I didn't understand what she was doing there, because that everyone had a purpose there, but all she did was sit there and pray. And I didn't know what she was doing there. And so at times I would listen to her praying, and like I couldn't hear her words, but what I felt was like this loving energy, this intense loving energy. It was like it didn't matter what the words were. It was almost like the words were just a highway to bring this beautiful, loving energy of healing energy, this healing energy, that it wouldn't matter what the words were. It was like a highway for it. And anytime, like anytime like I started to like have like it, like I wasn't gonna make it, like I would feel that loving energy, and it would just give me such a charge. It really would. And I didn't hear a word, but it was like, it was like the energy. I don't know how to describe it. And I didn't know who this was until I woke up, because now I could sense spirit, and I could like reevaluate everything in my life. And I knew who that person was. They looked nothing like they looked now, but I could see the spirit. It was my friend Kathy, and so I texted her right away while I was still in the hospital. I finally got my phone, and I said, I heard your prayers. And I said, thank you for visiting me when I was out, if you know what I mean. And she freaked out. She said, you heard my prayers? I said, yes, I heard your prayers. And I described it. And she was, because she prayed for me. She told me she prayed her along with my cousins, and, a little prayer circle. But she said she prayed for me every day, that I would get better, she would give me the strength to get better. And so I thought to myself, is that if it's just a show for Steve, how could that happen? You know, if it really wasn't happening, and I don't mean like, no, I mean like if these weren't real experiences and not just a show from spirit to get Steve to learn, if these just weren't real experiences, how could that happen? And so that and there were several other things that happened that made me believe that that no, this isn't a show. These things are really there, and these people are really on their life path. Because it wasn't until later, okay, so it wasn't until later that I figured out what Joey and Johnny meant when they said that I'm hoping you'll be all right. They didn't mean there. They meant here, that they were going to be my spirit guides to help me through this crazy recovery. I couldn't walk, I couldn't sit up out of bed. And who better to help me through that recovery than John, who had the infected leg and my leg was shattered. I had all these tubes and rods in my legs. Who better could understand it? Or Joey with his back. He had a broken back. I had a broken back. And it's not like I felt their energy like, oh, yeah, Steve, do one more push up. No, I felt like a surety of outcome. I felt that if I did these things, I would get better. It wasn't like a woe is me. It was like, this is where I am. This is where I got to be. And that was the energy that I felt from them. And what trajectory were they on? Was that made up for me? Or were they learning to going through their own transitions, that they were going to stay in spirit and they were learning to become spirit guides? And what better thing that they could have in their word to have their Stevie there, you know, and everything else, you know, someone who had the same things that they had, you know, like everything just fits, you know, it's like that. That's what I mean. I didn't feel like there was a master power. I'm not saying there isn't or isn't, but it's what I said in the beginning was like, I really believe that we are the creator, we are the creation. Everything is just part of when we learn that God is everywhere. It's not like God has eyes everywhere. It's God is everywhere and everything. God is us. We are the universe. At least that's what I got out of it.
It seems like, listen to you talk, like, it makes me wonder if the other side is like this big playground of intelligent, intentional, supportive consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that I think I wasn't the final destination. I didn't make it that far. I've, you know, and that's
Yeah,
why,
it's true.
that's why I have this story to tell, is because that up until very recently, no one would be able to make it through that without this medical. I mean, just the doctors told me if this would have happened just 6 months earlier, the outcome would have been very different, like saving my leg and stuff. And then for me to be here with all my cognitive abilities still, you know, that is so rare to happen. And so I just think that that as time goes on, is that we I forgot the point I was making, Peggy. I'm starting to get tired, but I was
Okay.
making some sort of point there.
So when you come out of this coma, how did you wrap your mind, or did you have this memory of all this right
No,
away? Did
okay,
it come by?
great stuff. Great point. No, I thought it was the drugs. I thought I'm making this all up in my mind, and I was laughing about it for like a year after. I was recounting it to my family and friends, and we at the bar, the neighborhood bar, we would all laugh about it because I was starting to get better. The first time I could make it to the neighborhood pub, that was a big deal. My friends clapped and stuff, and and so no, it wasn't, except for when I would talk to my sister about it. She would say, no, Stephen, no, no. She said, I know you. No, no, it wasn't the drugs. What you're saying is real. And Kathy, my co-author, the lady who prayed for me, she said, no. She said, how would we be able to communicate? You said, no, no. And yeah, we also would in a drum circle with this great shaman. He's a great guy. I really liked him. He's passed now, but I told him this story, and I said I always thought it was what was the drugs, and he was like a '60s kind of like hippie kind of guy. He says, "Well, it doesn't mean that it's wrong." So he was, but it was a long process to come to terms with it. Although as time went on, I began to remember more and more because one memory would trigger another memory that would trigger another memory. And so once I began to think through it and began to remember things more and more, it became more and more real to me. And then when there were moments where it reached out into real world, that those were the times that were shocking, and those were the time that made me really, really, really believe that no, 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 this was real.
And if it was drugs or dreams, hallucinations, I don't think you'd remember them like
Well,
this long, like maybe right after, but not this long and having such an impact on you,
yeah,
like NDEs do.
mm, I think you're right. And what was very different about this experience was that it was prolonged. It was long. It lasted forever. You know, your dreams are just a night. It was like forever. And so no, it was very. But I'll give you an example of something that that happened. Is that my co-author Kathy and I, when we were writing our book, the name of our book is called "The Place Between Here and There," and it details all this, this beautiful journey. I say it's beautiful now, but there's definitely been some really rough spots, before and after, which are very meaningful and brings things into light. But but when Kathy and I were writing the book, we would walk along the beach on Long Island. We lived about a mile or two away from the beach, so we'd walk down there. We'd walk up and down. We'd see the same people every day, often. And Kathy loves Saint Germain and the Violet Flame, and she just loves Saint Germain. And so when we'd walk along the beach, she would send out healing energy to the world. Especially during the health crisis the world has been struggling with. And so, first off, if it wasn't for Kathy, things would have been a lot worse because she's sending her healing energy out there. But so she was asking for a validation from Saint Germain that Saint Germain's heard her prayers. And so she likes to find beach glass. Beach glass is that glass that washes up on the shore, is kind of pitted, and people make jewelry out of it. So she wanted to find violet beach glass. Because the Violet Flame, Saint Germain, that's his thing. I don't know the details, but she can explain it to you. And so she wanted to find this violet beach glass. And if you know anything about searching for beach glass on Long Island, violet beach glass is like finding hen's teeth. You will never find violet beach glass. I knew when she said that she was going to be disappointed. So we're walking along the beach. She was doing her affirmations and stuff, and sending out that love and light. And really, I'm making fun of it, but no, it's a beautiful thing because she reached me. It really works. So it's all cool. But I knew she wasn't going to find this beach glass, and so we're walking away from the beach, and she had the puss on, and so it's like I was trying to think of something nice to say to her to make her feel okay about the not finding the beach glass, and that Saint Germain really did hear her. It just didn't work out the beach glass thing. And then all of a sudden, this Dalmatian puppy, this little puppy, Dalmatian, white and black spots all over it, comes running out of the sand dunes and starts jumping all over us. And I love it. I'm wrestling with the doggy. The owner's running out from behind the sand dunes saying, "No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." And I was like, "No, it's okay. It's okay. We love dogs. We know puppies." And so we start chatting with her. And so I asked, "What's the dog's name?" Violet. how does a Dalmatian puppy with black and white spots on it
Get called
named
Violet.
Violet? So I was in shock. I was shaking my head. Kathy's, Kathy's telling the stranger all about our lives, and by the time she's done, she knows how many children. I'm kidding, but and we just chatted. So walking away, and Kathy was still fuming about no beach class. And I said, "Come on, Kathy, the dog's name is Violet. How does that happen? You're looking Violet beach class, Violet dog, and she excuse me." And so she finally got it. And so as we're getting back to the car, I said, we have to find out why we're here. It's not just about dogs Violet and we're looking for Violet beach class, although that's important. No, there's some other reason for why we were here. And so about a month later, we're walking along the beach, and just like last time, his dog, I see she can't. Well, no, dog just loved us. That's why. And the dog would come running out and jump all over us, and she recognized us, and so she smiled again. We came up to her, and we have pictures of this lady and the dog in the book, by the way. And Kathy goes running up to her, and she says, and she tells her the story about Violet and the beach glass and how the dog's named Violet. And this lady paused for a little bit, and she got very, very teary-eyed. And she said, and so we asked her, how did the dog's name Violet? And she said, well, her son. She said her son and her, their favorite movie to watch together was Gone with the Wind. And Scarlett O'Hara would wear this big violet dress, in the thing. And so that was the show that they would watch together. And so she picked out the name Violet, and so she spelled it the way Scarlett O'Hara spells her name, and so it's spelled a little different. And you see, she lost her son. She lost her son, and that was her way of coming to terms with that. You see, I lost my son too. And I lost my son from a drug overdose just a few years earlier. How does that happen? Really? Really? How does that happen? Is that just a coincidence? And we became very good friends, and we talked, and we shared, and we helped each other. And I can't help but think that was the two of them bringing us together.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Absolutely.
And so as time went on, I've had many of these encounters like that, that's connecting us to spirit in a way, because now I could sense spirit in things. So it changes my approach to life and what I look for. Like so many signs and synchronicities that I have received in my life before this and after this, I just said they were coincidences. But then when I began to understand things more deeply and more closely, then I began to really see that very few of these coincidences, I believe, are coincidences. And a lot of times that's the way spirit communicates to you. And I love mediums. I love psychics, and they really do wonderful things. And many of them are learning as they go along and growing, and they really connect us with spirit. But that's not the only way I've learned that you connect with spirit. It's through these messages and signs and synchronicities. But really, the real challenge is to get rid of the oh wow factor. Now, because when we met the puppy, good old Violet, is that we could have stopped there and said, oh wow, yay, and that's a wonderful thing. And that's a process you have to go through. But it wasn't until we began to ask those other questions that we began to find those synchronicities. And that's really the key is, I think through these signs and synchronicities, it's just another way of spirit communicating. And that
it could be confirmation.
Yeah, and I have one more little story. Can I tell one more little story? I know I'm going long, but is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So another story is that when I was coming to terms with I come to terms every day with the loss of a child. It's not something you get over with anytime soon, or want to get over anytime soon. But my I was hiking in the woods. I kept on finding these red roses everywhere I went, just out in the middle of the woods. It would be a red rose here, red rose there. I thought it was so funny. And Kathy was out walking with me, and she would find them and she would bring them to my attention, and she would say, "Oh, someone's trying to communicate to you. This is a sign." I was like, "You're out of your mind." And what happened was is that my cousin went to a psychic, a medium, to connect with her grandmother who had passed. And when she got with the medium said, Nick is trying to get through to you. And Nick was my son's name. And said, "Do you want to let him through?" And she said yes. And he recounted many things that only Nick would know. And we touched base with him later. But he also said that he has a synchronicity with Saint Teresa, and Saint Teresa is sending roses. And have you been getting roses? And yeah, we've been seeing these roses for so long, and so I was just writing it off. And so Kathy was so excited by this, and I really didn't think too much of it. I mean, I was in denial. I was, and and so that was what was it. And then so Kathy gives me this prayer card that has Saint Teresa's information, the bio information. And so we had made like a little place to place flowers in the woods. We called it the Saint Teresa Shrine, but we would put a pen there and a rock, and the next day there were like 100 rocks there. I mean, it was beautiful because people would leave little prayers there and such. And we loved it because that was the first time as I began to come to terms with a lot of things, because that reminded me of the Sting song. You put a prayer down and you put it out and you think that you're going to get an answer to your prayer, but little do you know there's 100,000 other people asking for prayers. It's very similar to like the message in the bottle song. He throws a message in the bottle hoping instead he gets 100,000 messages back. But that was very comforting to me because it reminded me that we're all connected and we're all in this together. And that was really the first step. But so we went to put a Saint Teresa statue there at this to write our prayers. And we look on the card, and on the card it says Saint Teresa's birthday. That was my son's birthday, very same day.
Mm.
And then a look on the card is Saint Teresa's canonization day was the same day my son died. How do these things happen? Like goes to a psychic, and these two dates and the synchronicity and the flowers and the two dates, the same dates, and it's a litany of things like that happened over time that continually connects me back to that place between here and there. And that no matter what goes on in your life, there's one lesson that I could leave everybody with, is that life is good and people are good, even when very sad things happen. And these are just words if you're listening to them. But if you could really find out why that is true in your life, you'll find bliss in any world, this world or any one that comes afterwards. You really will.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I know it's difficult. We share these stories and they're not all bliss. I mean, we have hardships and lessons and crosses to bear.
Mm.
So your book, The Place Between Here and There.
Let me hold it up.
Sure.
The place between here and there. It's a beautiful book. It's also a love story. When Kathy and I were writing it, is that we wrote it in a way that we created a narrative that really, relates to us as people, because to myself, spirituality, this whole spirit thing that was dumped in my lap, all I did was survive, and now all of a sudden I have all this stuff. But it's really, it's not like a purpose of life. And what I mean by that, to me, is that it may make sense for some people to be a guru and sit on the mountains, do Om all day, and spend their life like that. That'll be fine for them. But my advice is to live life and use spirit as a guide in life, not a purpose of life. The best thing you could do is get experiences. And this is what this book is about. It's about all of our experiences and coming to terms with this, very similar to the story that we talked about today. It tells, it tells that story, but it tells it in a way of discovery, not like a manual. It's a beautiful tale about love and life, and coming to terms with grief and finding happiness after some of the most difficult challenges in life, and really not getting soured towards life, and finding peace and happiness in just about everything you do. It really is there. So often our prison bars are of our own construction, and really there are some really sad parts in the book, but it has a happy ending, and we write even more happier pages every day.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'll put some links in the description.
So
People can
I have a
find your book.
question for you. I want to practice yoga in your room there. Is that a fake background, or is that really your
No,
background?
no, it's my house.
Oh, that is so awesome. Oh, that is great. I love it. That
I
is
just moved to this office. I had another one and I was closer to the glass door, and I had the same stuff on the door. So I put the same stuff on the door up here to try to make it similar, bring
there's
some
a
of it
haze,
with me.
there's a haze that comes in through the window, and it like lights you up like an aura behind you.
Oh.
Oh, Jay, do you have any questions for me? I could really go into a monologue, because even when I recount the story, I kind of like relive it all over again. I can't help it. And sometimes I just rant on, and I don't give other people a chance to
No,
talk. And
it's just, I always compare people's NDEs when I hear them to my own NDEs to try to understand this all, like you're doing.
Yeah.
You're trying to understand it all. And my mind was going back to my 5-year-old drowning NDE. It was all out of body. And the first thing that happened was this memory showed up. It was like I was living it. I was back in our living room, and I'm looking in this goldfish bowl, and this little scenario taught me something. It's like, oh, the fish knows something I don't. I'm dead. Because the fish were bumping into me in the pond. And I wasn't getting it that I was dead. I was thinking my parents lied to me. There's no such thing as drowning, because I'm fine now. It was no more pain and choking and scared, and so, oh, I'm a dead girl ball in this pond. And so that I thought of that, like I'm trying to imagine these scenarios you're going through. And then I thought of my second ND at 25. I'm yelling at God, I can't be here. I got to be back home raising my kids. And like, hell no, I won't go. You can't make me. And the answer was no, it was my time. But then this scenario opened up, and it wasn't a memory, like, with a fishbowl. It was like, I don't know who these people were, but it was like if you just walked into a grocery store and you see the girl checking out, and there's this little boy with dark hair, and he's standing there and he's screaming through his horrible fit of something he wants, and he wants it right now. And then there's a mother standing there. It's like, no, you can't have it. The answer was no. And I got it through that scenario. Oh my gosh, this is something God's showing me that a young mother would understand. That's how I'm acting. I'm acting like this spoiled child. The answer is no. And I'm still throwing this fit. And I'm thinking, I got to calm down, but I still want what I want. But I'm just going to change. I'm going to grow up now and act more behaved, and ask God again in a different way. And so the scenario you had, it was really like, it just seems like the other side, they can they don't say, here, it's this book, read this. Here's this movie, watch it. You are actually in a live thing. They can give it to you. That's like that intelligent. They can put you in a situation. And also too, so I'm trying to behave, and I say, well, try to manipulate. I'm like, well, if you could show me my kids will be better off without me for whatever reason, I agree to stay. But if not, I beg to return. And then I see a man from behind, and I assume Jesus, and I'm right beside him, and we dip down in the future, as if I had died, my kids are down there discussing the fact that mom has died. So I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm trying to picture it, comprehend it. And the only thing I could come up with was the memories I have of my own deaths. Is the only thing I have to attach in my brain. There's nothing on earth that I can attach to your story. My memory had to go back in my NDEs to attach to what you're saying.
Everybody has, I believe, everyone needs to have their own experience. So, like somebody growing up in Boston would have a very different experience than somebody growing up in Rio de Janeiro. The things that you would experience. It's really according to where you are, I believe. Let's see.
And all we can do is try to figure it out, scratch the surface. We'll know soon enough, but we're impatient. We want to know now. We want to figure this. We got these memories. We was there briefly, and so and then we hear other people's stories, and I think it's just natural to try to understand.
So true. Well, I appreciate all that you do, and I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. And
thank you for coming.
And thank you. And by all means, please send me the link so I could see it when you're all done.
Oh, I will. It'll be done later today. I'll send it to you.
I'll see you later. Be well. Take care.
Bye-bye.